I'd be quite happy to show anyone this config. I don't have any secrets in here.
Hello and welcome to SSW TV. My name is Andreas Lenkik and I'm joined here today by Bryden Oliver. Bryden is a solution architect here at SSW and he's here to talk about how we can solve storing secrets in our application config. Bryden, how you doing?
Very well, thank you, Andreas.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here on this show. I hope you can help enlighten us. Can you start off maybe telling us why is storing secrets so bad? We hear it being talked about, but really, what is the reasons why you want to be keeping secrets and configuration outside of your application files?
Okay, so one of the biggest problems a lot of my clients and customers have is that they've gone and created all these resources and all of them have a secret key that you need to access that resource. And you've got to store that secret somewhere. And if you're trying to be really secure, you've got to rotate that secret regularly and you've got to have a policy to do that. And the amount of effort that goes into keeping these secrets is enormous, when really it would be better if you didn't have to have the secrets in the first place.
It's a lot of management and configuration you have to handle in the background. And there's always a security possibility, security leak. If you accidentally store it in your version control, what's going to happen? You need to scrub it somehow. It's not always the best.
Yeah, that's right. That's another big hole, is that people accidentally committed to source control and then you've permanently got a key stuck in your source control. So you've got to rotate that key immediately or mitigate that risk somehow.
So, obviously it's a security flaw. It is, I think, some people just default to it as the easy answer. So what is a solution that we can give people as an alternative?
With Azure Functions, we can avoid having to have secrets at all. So the easy way to do this is by assigning your Azure Function app or other types of web apps what's called a managed identity. And a managed identity is like giving your app an Azure Active Directory account, just like your one that you use to log in to, say, Azure portal and get access to the various Azure resources. You can give one of those to your applications and then they can use that to access the resources rather than having to use a key that they've been given.
So does that kind of sounds like you're adding a user to your AD, but now it's going to be for your service?
That's right. And you don't do it quite the same way that you do a user. What you do is, if we come into one of our Azure resources here, so I've got my little function app here, and if I go to, there's now an identity tab blade down here, and if we have a look, you can have a system assigned identity, and I just turn that on. So what that does is that creates an Azure Active Directory account for my service. And then I can go and give it permissions to things. And one of the things that's quite nice here is you can go and see what things my application is allowed to do. So if I go and click this, I get a lovely little list of, it's allowed to read configuration in this resource group. It's allowed to read application configuration out of this app configuration. It can read from this, it can read and write, because it's an owner, from this service bus and so on. So you can see it's got a very clear list of things it's allowed to do and not allowed to do.
And is this set up automatically when you turned it on and you got that role, or are these features that you plugged in yourself?
So this is just a list of the ones this application's been assigned. If I go to one of my resources, so this is an event hub, and if I go to access control and look at the role assignments, I can click add role assignment. So let's say I want to give my application a data receiver role. So that means it can read from this event hub. I then drop down, and you see we've got system assigned managed identity, and then there's all these different things that are allowed to have identities. So I'm going to pick, this is a function app, I want to give to, and I want to give my identity demo app that role.
And is that searching through the resources in the resource group or just across the whole subscription?
It's just looking for all function apps across that subscription there that I've got selected. So I've picked out that identity demo app and said it's going to be able to receive data from my Event Hub, and I click save, and now it's allowed to read.
Easy as that. So now you've set up a role and a connection between the role and the resource that you've previously defined.
That's right. And now we can go across to our code, because now we've got access. We've now created the resources we wanted, we've turned on the identity, and we've given ourselves a role that lets us do stuff. We can go to see some code. So if I want to read from that Event Hub, typically what you would do is this constructor here, you would be passing in a connection string, which has a secret key in it. Now all I'm doing is passing in the namespace and which one of the Event Hubs inside that namespace I want. And then the critical bit here is this new default Azure credential. And what that does is it'll grab the managed identity that that application is running at. But even more nicely, if you're debugging on your local machine, that will use your current logged in user, and it will try and connect with your logged in user. So you can debug as if you were an application locally by just adding yourself with the role you want on Azure.
That sounds like a really powerful feature, and you'll be able to tell what environment is running live and what is running locally in dev and so on, because it's all a different role. You can track it that way.
Yes, I've got a few things set up here. Service bus client, it's the same thing. You just tell it which namespace and the credential again. Cosmos has the same semantics. The only one that's a little bit trickier is I like to use the automatic triggers. So if I want to read data from, say, a storage queue, and I've got an Event Hub trigger here, you'll see there's these slightly strangely formatted. So we've got the queue trigger, which reads the name, and this one's the address. Now, if we go and look at the local settings.json, we'll see that these ones have slightly strange naming conventions. So if we look for queue name, that's as expected.
Mm-hmm.
But that queue address has this magic piece added to the end there. And this is because these triggers are currently still in preview for Azure Functions. And the address is here. So you can see I'd be quite happy to show anyone this config. I don't have any secrets in here.
Fantastic. I mean, so it looks like you have an Azure function running there and you're trying to pull secrets out of your config file. And so you're saying that there's a little bit of weirdness around the naming of the configuration variables because of it's a pre-release feature. But you wouldn't have the same issue in another type of app like a web app or an API running.
That's right. And it's really just these triggers. So the underlying classes all support it nicely. It's just while they're ironing out the Azure Functions triggers, they didn't want it to clash with the existing configuration.
So what if you got this trigger and queue doing? It's just reading from the hub?
I've done a sort of cascade. So you hit an HTTP thing, which drops some data into a queue, a storage queue. The storage queue has a queue trigger here, which then just uses that Event Hub to pass it down the line, and it writes it into there. The Event Hub then reads and writes it into a service bus, and I haven't quite finished the code yet. I was going to write from the service bus into Cosmos just to finish off the demo.
Yeah, a bit of a long pipeline solution of getting things to the final result, but it really demonstrates it, the connection strings you can have without having to bother about what's the private key and stuff like this. You're using the Azure credential instead.
Yeah, and then if we look at this, at my application, go back to my application, where are we? And we go to the configuration again. Once it loads up, if I go through here, there's nothing secret in here. I can just click on here, and if I'm showing someone on a call, I don't have to worry that I'm revealing a secret that they could then use, because there's no secrets in here anymore. Everything is sort of publicly accessible, except the ones that Azure Functions puts in automatically. So all of my what used to be secret config is now public. I'm happy for any customer, anyone to accidentally see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really fantastic, and how mind-blowing it is that you can do it so simply. You really just turned on your identity and then connected it up with a simple WYSIWYG, not quite drag and drop, but drop down and select. And now inside the code, we can just get the managed identity and not have to bother with secrets at all. I think the real power we have here is that you're taking the stress out of it. It's actually easier for you now to use this than it might be to set up configuration secrets in multiple different environments. And it kind of puts that power to the user and to the developers. And also you'll have all the security features that otherwise you'd have to implement manually or by yourself.
Yeah, and that's what we've been finding, is that this is actually easier to work with than the old way of hiding secrets away. Like, it's actually less work to do this than to create a secret. So really, Microsoft have done a great job here in that it's easier to do the right thing than the wrong thing now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, one thing I'm curious about, and I'm sure the viewers are curious about, is this usable for every service in Azure? And what happens if you have a secret outside of Azure that you wanted to also put into your config file? How could you manage that?
Okay, so they've done most of the services in Azure. Certainly all the core services are done. Cosmos DB was close to the last one, and that was done very recently. But if you do have secrets, Key Vault supports this. And for instance, the real value in doing this in Key Vault is that you can use your managed identity to read from Key Vault, and therefore you can give really fine-grained access control to which keys, individual keys, your application can read. And of course, it's not using a connection string to connect to Key Vault anymore, so you don't have to worry about someone else getting that Key Vault connection string and then using it. It's only your application can use that and get those secrets. So your audit log of who's read the secrets is absolutely accurate, whereas before you had to go, well, I know that's the secret that my application's using, but I don't know, 10 of the developers also have access to that connection string. I don't know if it's one of them who's accessed that secret. It has to be your application now.
Yeah, it sounds like you can do it right at the application setting level, like at the individual secret level, you can define this role access.
Yes, and you've got an audit log of that, of who's read those secrets, so you know who's read them and where they might be.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's a really powerful feature that they're putting into the hands of developers. So this is live and usable now? Is it in pre-release or?
Most of this has been here for 2 or 3 years. It's been a matter of them executing on every service being able to use it. So managed identities have been around for quite a while. Just lots of things didn't support them yet. But now we're getting to the point where it's almost everything supports it, so you're mad not to use them.
That sounds really fantastic. I hope the users can really see the real power behind Azure Managed Identities, how it can really improve your security, how simple it is to really set up, and the real power behind removing these secrets from your configuration files and not having to stress. Is there anything you'd like to plug, Bryden? Any more shows coming up for you?
Okay, I'm going to put together a full-length presentation where I also go through how you would deploy an application like this from end to end, including deployment scripts and stuff like that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for having me.